Okay, so beyond these influence methods, there is a set of cognitive biases. I will just highlight some of them. For example, anchoring and priming is just using not even a psychological ability or specifics of the brain. They use some really hardwired things within our brain. Our tendency to use the neurons that were just highlighted by some activity. Okay, so if we are starting a negotiation about the price, for example, yeah, and the person who is entering this negotiation first has upper hand, basically, because they have an ability, they have a chance to shape the further discussion by anchoring both sides to a specific figure. So they just say, okay, let it be $100,000, and the other side could not possibly just split this amount in half. Yeah, so it's not culturally acceptable. It will either just break it. Okay, so guys, okay, this is not what we expect, and negotiations will end. But if the other side will decide to proceed, it most probably will hang around this figure for the rest of negotiations. And this might be far higher than is acceptable for the first side, for the one who declared this initial price. Okay, priming is basically the same. We are trying to make people think about something, about the concept or a fact, or just remember the figures in their head. Yeah, and we can expect them to use this information in their further decisions. Okay, so for example, again, priming with a number. When you are trying to present something, present a price, you might start from, okay, and now we are talking about the price. Of course, it won't cost you $1 million. Yeah, and then you just narrow it down to those $100,000, which is more pleasant to hear for the other side after you mentioned this $1 million figure. Okay, so this is priming. Or just making people think of large numbers before you are starting persuading them to think about the price is also really promising in terms of negotiations. This is what priming and anchoring is. Okay, so risk appetite is the whole different story. So people are willing to accept risks if they have something to lose. Okay, so this is our innate ability to deal with different risks in critical situations, and all the time we see that something can be taken away from us, we are more willing to risk. So if you shape your proposition as a potential loss in the result of taking action that is not in your interest, yeah, you will most probably elicit this risky behavior from the target. And on the other hand, if you shape this as a gain, yeah, so if you phrase it in a manner that if the person takes the actions you are proposing, they will gain something, this will decrease the risk appetite. So the decision will be less risky from what you proposed. Okay, so if you give two variants and you think that one is risky and one is not, and you want a person to take a risky decision in this situation, you have to shape it as a possible loss. And if you want the person to take the second decision, the not risky one, you have to phrase it as a gain. So this is quite tricky, but it really works, and deviation between these two is really large. Okay, stereotypes. This is my favorite thing, basically. So we have these templates in our head. Yeah, so we cannot think through all the things that happen around us in full capacity. We have to shortcut somewhere. So we build these stereotypes based on some portion of things we know of a class of things, and then about every other thing in this class we just apply this stereotype. This is really tricky because the types of things are really fragile and volatile, so and people are really different in some situations. So there was a really strong experiment about that when most people know that there are strong stereotypes. First, that girls are not as good at math as the boys, yeah, and second is that Asians are really more capable at math than the rest of the world. So believe it or not, they had two focus groups of Asian girls who were before taking the standard math test were primed by these stereotypes. So the first group was asked, do they live in the dormant for only for girls or in like combined ones, yeah. And the second group was asked what language they use at home, yeah. So like covertly they were primed to think about their nationality or their gender before the test, and the results of these tests differed dramatically. Okay, so of course, the ones who remembered their nationality right before the test, they outperformed the first group, the other group, dramatically. So this is not only the effect of stereotypes on people. This is the effect of stereotypes on the objects of those stereotypes. This is really strong thing. So employing stereotypes is really ethically tricky because yeah, to not to harm the feelings of the target and not to miss the target first of all by applying wrong stereotypes. You have to be really careful. Okay, and nonverbal communication is also a really broad topic, but here I will just highlight that yeah, there is some notion of lying or not lying on the social engineering engagements. So let's start from emotions and microexpressions. As you might already know from popular culture, emotions are quite universal. So human beings, independent of their nationality or culture, express emotions more or less universally. So that's okay to find out yourself on I don't know, on Papua New Guinea, and you will be able to read emotions of the people there, although they not always share the same cultural values or even seen a European person before, for example. Yeah, so they express the same emotions, and the micro expressions is the situation when you're trying to limit the extent of your emotion showing up on your face or on your body. Yeah, so this control of emotion and micro expressions is really important when you are under stress, and when you are performing a social engineering attack you are normally under stress, yeah, at least for first 10 years of practice. So this is really interesting to be able, and really important to be able to control that, and to read that on your target as well, because sometimes early reactions and the early ability read emotions and detect that you've been actually detected, or there is some signs that the target is not willing to proceed this engagement, this communication with you, will help you to withdraw with the least harm on you both. Okay, And what about gestures and positions? These two are also universal to some extent, but gestures especially, they are very culture dependent. Different gestures in different cultures the same gestures in different cultures may signify, may be read by your target very differently. So it's a good idea, if you are trying to work within different culture, to get familiar with what's their traditions about that, in order not to not to draw additional attention to what you do. And positions of your body are actually able to make a person more willing to communicate with you, it can allow you to achieve this state of rapport between you two. Yeah, this state of rapport that is way over used in popular culture. So, but this is the thing. It exists, and synchronizing your behavior with your target is really important into when you're trying to get this situational trust. Yeah, so this thing that lasts only for a few minutes and can help you achieve your goals, and then leave, withdraw without any harm to you both, and present the evidence to the management, and point out what cultural organizational changes should be introduced in order for this to never happen again. Okay, so this is what psychological techniques are. Some of them are even anthropological, yeah, but this is the human side of our operation when we are executing social engineering attacks.